Here we are on the North Fork of the Flathead River. What's right across the river is Glacier National Park. We're not in the park, we're just outside the park on the south end. This river comes out of Canada. And it's a beautiful place even in the rain. Here we are with Eric Bissell today, again.
Look what we found in the middle of this debris pile. Talk about this in a minute. Check out this riverbank here. Ripped up by the roots. Look at these weeds. Not even weeds, these are saplings. Tremendous flood came through here. When was this, you think?
This spring.
This spring.
Yep. Big runoff for a while.
Montana river rock. Look at these colors.
It's nice blue, red, gray, brown.
You got to pay big money for this down in Portland. They ship it in.
Oh, there's a very interesting one.
Wow.
I don't know if that's natural coloring, but it's pretty. Humans have been here.
Humans have been here.
I don't know, so, you know, somehow I like these natural colors better than that. Boy, this one looks like it was sheared with a saw. Look at that, a straight cut. Oh, is that a natural phenomenon? You think that's natural, that it broke like that?
Yeah.
Is that?
It did, and it is a little worn. Well, the reason I tell
Some of those
you
are
is
pretty
this
brittle.
Is raised right here, so it broke quite a while back and got worn.
Interesting. The grain is going this way, but yet it was able to be sheared off like that.
Yeah, might have just got clumped hard with another rock in the
Look at these.
rapid water.
Just the interesting layering of.
Each one of those layers represents 10 billion years.
It's like that other video did, you know, the game of rocks. What does that mean? That'll be another video, but I'm just saying there's some great stories in rocks if you know how to read them. You know, take a look at these here. Montana riverbank. And you get the kind of the vertical. A lot of people have never seen this stuff. This is pretty nice. So easily taken for granted when you live here. Well, let's go back to the campsite here and.
Striation.
Kind of bipolar.
Right through the middle. Different. All the red, and then a green, and then a red-green. Red-green?
Got any duct tape?
And duct tape.
So anyway, the concept of this piece of driftwood, this is astounding. Can you catch that? Can you see on the camera there?
Yeah,
There's these little smooth, rounded. What do you suppose made that?
I'll tell you exactly.
I'd have to say
There's a rock.
That's a root.
This is a root growing around the rocks.
Yes, sirree. Took it a long, hard time to do that.
This is where it broke off. So some tree, I'm going to guess this is at least 10 or 15 years old, grown off of a tree. The root was running down, weaving around all the obstacles, put out this little tendril, and that one, this is the end. This is worn.
Looking for water.
Every divot was a maneuvering around one of these round river rocks here. This is incredible. It's lightweight, it's smooth. Every stone of obstacle in its path gave it this character. Notice that gimbal shape? As the root was gimmeling, there's the, you could look at it this way as the lomage shape.
Hello, son.
But every obstacle in the course of this route, as it gimmeled down its life, look at that, there's some more.
Me and Dad ergonomically right.
The point is, what gives this route its beauty, the word sheresh, shin reshin, is the word for root. Let's head on. It's starting to pick up some rain. It's also branch. But as we progress through our life, the course from Aleph to Tav, from A to Z, here to there, it's the obstacles and the way we maneuver around them which ends up giving us the beautiful character that we end up being, is each person. So let's head back this way. And so we're going to talk about I got to grab my books here. We're going to talk about the verse in 1 Samuel chapter 30 at the end of the chapter. The previous video was about Ziklag, David's city, and that he recovered so much loot from conquering the Amalekites who had sacked Ziklag that he distributed the repillaged wealth that he got from Amalek and gave it to like a dozen other cities, and we went through the names of those cities. Here, you want to give a hoot and a holler?
That's right.
Yahweh help us.
Beautiful.
So in the end of 1 Samuel 30, David had been hunted for years by Saul. The Philistines didn't trust him. His own men were mutinying and wanting to kill him. One wife that he had, Michal, that was Saul's daughter, had been given to somebody else, and David was left in despair with nothing. His own wives and family and city was burned and ruined. The family had been taken captive by the Amalekites. And this verse says, David strengthened himself in YHUH. And so we were talking about how did he do that? It doesn't tell us how. But if you read through, so it's not raining too hard. We're just going to go through a couple things here. Yeah, we could stand under this tree. But you can stay sitting there. It's okay. If you stay sitting there, then you can give commentary. So if you go back to the end of 1 Samuel, well, what he did was that it happened that when David and his men arrived in Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekite had spread out to the south end of Ziklag. They had attacked Ziklag, burned it with fire, captured the women, and then when it, jump ahead a few verses, verse 6 of 1 Samuel 30, I have to stand close, otherwise we're not going to get, the wind is going to be, in fact, why don't you stand here by the tree to keep the wind from. So, the first thing David did was drew strength from Yahweh's Elohim. So I'm gonna read this as if it's following the Mishkan pattern. So the Mishkan pattern is you've got the big white fence, then you've got the barbecue grill, which is the altar of sacrifice, and then you've got the bronze laver, and then there's the covered place, and you've got the menorah, table of showbread, altar of incense, and then in the most set apart place you've got the Ark of the Covenant. So the big white fence, the first part of the Mishkan pattern, actually you start off outside the fence, which is to say a place of trouble. David was in the midst, overwhelmed by trouble, difficult circumstances that he saw no way out. And the first thing he did was turn to draw strength from Yahweh. That's like turning to the big white fence, which is, you might say, the castle with Yod He Vav He written on it, the imperial colors, red, blue, purple, red, and white. 4 colors of the embroidery is like Yahweh's name. Blue for the Yod, purple for the He, red for the Vav, white for the second Hey. And I say that, it's just artistic license, poetic license to say blue, purple, red, and with white linen. Why is it always the same colors? Well, Yod He Vav He, there's 4 letters. What does the Yod mean? The hand that works, the hand that builds and constructs. Why is the sky blue? Why is the Zitziot blue? Why is sapphire the color of the pavework in front of the throne that he saw? Well, blue speaks of the authority of the Creator. Well, so if we equate the blue to the Yod, and if Yod is the hand of the Creator, you could say, well, blue speaks of the authority of the fact that he made this place, and that's what the letter Yod means. Hey, the second letter, is an expression. Well, the expression of the Creator is his royal decrees. Well, that would be purple. That would be the Torah. So if the Hey is the expression of the Yod, Hey is the feminine suffix of what comes before. Yod is a prefix that means he will, so it's this kind of a third-person reference, but it's this powerful action of expression in the creation, and the Torah explaining how he created it. The Vav, the third letter, is the 6th letter in the sequence of the alphabet, which is the masculine suffix, meaning he or it. So you could say there's this anthropomorphizing of that expression as the Mashiach, or a man walking in the ways of the Torah would be the Vav walking in the ways of the Hey of the Yod, red. Well, the word Adam means red. Dalet Mem is blood. Aleph Dalet is vapor. So like breath is a vapor. So you could say man, who's a composition of breath and blood, and life is in the blood, and life is sustained with breathing. And so there's something in the spelling of these Hebrew words. And so to recognize that the Mashiach is one who is the embodiment of the Torah, the Hey of the Yod of the Creator, and that Mashiach is the archetypal potential of what we are all supposed to be. So even Yeshua, when he was walking on the earth, he said, follow me. He says, I am worshiping my Elohim and your Elohim, my Father, your Father. So he was showing us how to conduct our steps along this path. And as we walk in those steps along this path, and when Yeshua koofed out of here after he had Zadied resurrected, remember 40 days he walked the earth after he resurrected, then he koofed, ascended. 10 days later was Shavuot, or Pentecost. Pentecost means count 50, it's a Greek term, but the point is, he was around for 40 days in a kuf essence after he Zadied. So I'm just trying to play in the alphabet to some of these concepts, where the people that walk in his ways like him, well, that's doing what the Torah said. So he said, do righteousness, and to be clothed in robes of righteousness, which is white linen. It's a typical, you might call it a metaphor. White robes of righteousness is to say walking in the ways of the Torah. And when he left, he said, I'm going to send you the Ruach HaKodesh to lead you and guide you in the way that you should be walking, which is in the ways of Torah, which is doing righteousness. So that second Hey, being a picture type of white linen, is to say the expression of the Vav. The Hey of the Vav is the Vav man, the man walking and conducting himself as the Mashiach of Israel, whether it's you or me or David or Joseph or Moshe or Yeshua or any one of these people can be technically what a Mashiach is. But the point of saying the Mashiach must conduct himself in an expression of righteousness, which is the second Hey. The first Hey, what is righteousness? It's defined by the instructions of the Torah, which is the Yod, the hand of the Creator, manifest literary in words, lexicographically you might say, by understanding words, which is what this whole study of Hebrew, which is Ivrit, which is what the letters are all about. So as we conduct our path, we're supposed to stay on the straight and narrow. But if you're thinking, oh, straight and narrow, right down this path, that's the only right way, and your life ends up looking like this, it's like, what the heck? Is this contrary to the straight and narrow? No, look it. Just like that other one we found, it looks convoluted and twisted and distorted, but it's working its way around the obstacles. So somehow he gave us this great paradox that Yahuwah himself, our Elohim, is going to allow us or cause us, or it's his game, he's going to put all these obstacles and expect us to walk this course in a straight and narrow way, not turning to the right or left. In fact, the word that means twisted, turned, going this way and that way, all over the place is literally the word Satan, which is Somic Tet Nun. But there's a difference between contorted and being, you might say, distorted. To walk the straight and narrow in this type of a path, a serpentine path, without being deviant, is like, where do you get the definitions of those words? In the Torah. What we do, according to what he said, is the definition of either righteous or wicked. In other words, if we do what he said, by definition, that's righteousness. If we don't do what he said, by definition, that's wickedness. So we need to find out what he said to do. So, if David turns to YHUH, and that's the big white fence, that's like the Yod, then David's job is to figure out what did he say. So the first step inside the big white fence is the barbecue grill. So the concept of the barbecue grill equates to the Torah. So take a look at this barbecue grill right here. Here we turn to YHUH to gain strength. That's step one. Step two, what did he say? Here's the barbecue grill. And notice that there's lines. So the letter Kaf is an open hand, and so the lines of your fingers correlating to the lines of the grill, correlating to lines of text. That's where I get the equivalence of the barbecue grill being the Torah lining up with the letters Kaf and Lamed. So the big white fence lining up with the letters Het, Chet, Tet, and Yod have to do with the identity of the Creator, the Emperor of the Kingdom of Heaven, the Infinite One, our Father. But what he said is the lines of instruction. And remember in Exodus 25, the barbecue grill was put right inside the fence. Whatever that looked like. Andrew Hoy has one idea of this round scope of the Mishkan. Typically it's drawn as a rectangle. Regardless of the way it's built, right inside the fence. What does that speak of? Well, day one of creation, he separated light from dark. So we're out in the darkness, like David in his situation, like us in our predicaments, the obstacles in the path of like these roots growing. And then when we turn to Yahweh, our Elohim, Yod He Vav He, just the name, just the concept that he is the Creator who built this place and says, turn to me. As soon as we turn to him, not that we know anything about him other than he built this place, instantly right in front of us, wham! A place of sacrifice where you give of yourself. That's where you put yourself on the altar and separate out the ways of the kingdom from the ways of the world. Your own wants and desires, as corrupt as they might be, that got you into the trouble perhaps to begin with, you yield them up and you put yourself as the living sacrifice on the altar of his gridiron, you might say, of the words of the Torah. And then your only task at hand, having said, Yahweh is my Elohim, I have to gain strength from Yahweh. What did he say? That's the only issue. Now out here you might have heard, what did people say he said? What are the doctrines? What are the teachings? What is history? How did it get convoluted into papal Christianity, rabbinical Judaism, Mohammedan, Islamic, Buddhist, Hindu, Aztec, Mayan, Oriental, Occidental? It's like it doesn't matter what is going on out here. The matter is, what did YHUH say in these words, and everything else gets burned up. You strengthen yourself by turning to Yahweh, and what did he say? Now the next matter, can I see that umbrella for a minute? There was a laver half the distance between the covered place and the barbecue grill. And this laver was made out of the bronze mirrors of the women. So however they got the water in there, that's a different story. Either they filled it up and then dipped out of it, or whether it was built on top of a spring. I've heard different stories. But the point is, what about the bronze laver? Well, if Het, Tet, and Yod is the big white fence, or as Andrew Hoy thought, maybe it's the whole fence was blue, purple, red, and white. Nevertheless, Kaf Lamed, Mem Nun. Mem is water, Nun is what comes out of the water. Mirrors. You look at yourself and you reflect, you ponder, you take it internal. Mem has to do with being pregnant. It's a womb. It's not just water. It's internalizing the seed of the Word. Yeshua told us that the Word of Elohim is the seed which brings forth life. The letter Nun is a seed that sprouted. So to take his word into our heart and ponder and nurture, like incubating, like gestating, like dealing with it. What does this mean? Am I going to cop an attitude? Am I going to do what he said? Am I going to grumble? Am I going to complain? Am I going to be thrilled? Am I going to be zealous? Am I going to say, I don't have time. I'll look at it later. It's taking it to heart. So David turned to Yahweh, and the first thing he did, if you read the story, is he called for the priest. Now the priest had on this, what's called an ephod, or the 12 stones in the breastplate, and he said, let's consult that. It's like, that almost looks like kind of a Ouija board thing, which is a type of sorcery, a type of witchcraft. Yahweh, as we said earlier, never do that. What did he do by consulting those stones? There's a whole other study, which we might get into here briefly. But the point is, David consulted. What did Yahweh have to say? He called the priest, the Cohen. The Cohen is the one who says, this is what Yahweh said, and this is what it means. And then David took the matter to heart, and he trusted in the word that Yahweh said to do. Here you go. The next matter, if you look at the Mishkan pattern, is that there's this covered tent. And inside the covered tent, there was a menorah, and then a table of showbread, and then an altar of incense. And then on the other side of that was the Ark of the Covenant. What's the menorah? A menorah is a picture of like a tree. It's a candlestick, candelabra. It bears fruit. Then, as soon as David got the word, he took it to heart, he strengthened himself, and he says, let's go for it. So he gathered the men. He had 600, but 200 of them were tired or disheartened, and they had to stay behind. He said, look, you watch the luggage. He took 400 guys, and he went hightailing it after. He didn't know who. How big was the army? He didn't know, but he took off after him. So the picture of the menorah is to say, stand and do what he said. Turn to Yahweh. What did he say? Take it to heart. Engage in the action. So it lines up with the moed of Yom Teruah. So you could say, well, these are just two different types of horns. But there's something about these which are actually battle instruments, implements of war. There's a verse where he says, when you are doing the stuff that he said to do, keeping the Shabbat, reading his word, taking the matters to heart, contemplating his name, learning his language, blow the shofar. And as you do that, week by week, day by day, your voice takes on a characteristic unlike anybody else's. And then it says, on the day of your trouble, when your enemies besiege you, you blow that shofar again, and it will be a voice of remembrance before Yahweh's face. And you, I know that voice, and he'll be right there to help us. That's what it says. So blowing these shofars is not just a matter of a cultural custom. It's a matter of, Yahweh, this is my voice. I'm remembering what you said to do. We are engaged in the action of doing it so that you will know we're listening and that we're remembering your words, that you're our Elohim. And no matter how big the army is that's coming against us, no matter how evil Antifa or the Black Lives Matter or the Illuminati or the Gateses and Soroses, no matter who they think they are, Yahweh, we're keeping your Moedim, your Yom HaShabbat. Yahweh Eloheinu, you are our Elohim, and in you we trust.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
And that's the end of that matter. And this lines up with Yom Teruah, the place of the menorah. The next piece of the Mishkan was the table of showbread, a place where there was 12 loaves, a place for the gathering of people to come and eat. Lines up with the letter ayin. It's a picture of a fruit. It's a picture of an eyeball, and it means weigh, measure, balance exactly, consider carefully. Weigh what? The fruit that you bear doing what he said. So as we do what he said in righteousness, with an eye for our neighbor, lines up with the beatitude that says, blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you. And Yahweh says repeatedly, a man's way will be returned on his own head.
Yep.
So when the calamity comes, whatever happens, we're going to get what we have been spending our life dispensing to others. And whoever these guys are doing vile things to others, you guys are going to get what's coming back on your head because Yahweh said so. That's written in the words. You better watch what you do. The point is, the next letter, so David remembers this. What he does as he goes on this campaign to find out who burned Ziklag and took all their people, at the place of the eye, it says he found somebody. He sees something. So as you're doing what he said, Yahweh provides. Whether it looks like an obstacle that you got to move around, a rock, as the root is seeking its way through the course that's not so straight, but he says conduct yourself on a straight course, he suddenly finds this guy who's almost dead. They give him food and drink, they recover him and say, who are you, what's going on? He says, I was hanging out with the Amalekites, perhaps he was a slave, I'm an Egyptian. He said, we burned Ziklag. David said, can you tell me where they are? Where are they? He says, yeah, I'll lead you if you don't turn me back in, if you don't kill me. So David said, okay. So now they're talking about it. That's the letter Pei, altar of incense. Okay, now what do? We got to go for this. We're committed. We're on track. He leads them quite a ways. The Amalekites filled the valley. They were partying, reveling, drinking, eating, cavorting. They were doing it. They had just been on a campaign similar to Vikings, or similar to what we read about the Mayans in that movie that Mel Gibson did, Apocalypto. It's like, oh gosh, why do we have to deal with stuff like this? Welcome to planet Earth. It just is what it is. David and 400 guys. There might have been 10,000. There might have been 80,000. Sometimes they had campaigns of 180,000 or 500,000 one time. We read different stories in the Bible. I mean, the valley was filled with guys. David and his 400 men killed every one except 400 youths that took off in camels and ran. So you might say the blossoming of the success is a picture of the Ark of the Covenant and the letter Zadi. So, just to go back into this. How did David strengthen himself in YHUH? You turn, first, right in the, you noticing the darkness, you turn to the big white fence. It's like, there was darkness and he said on day one, let there be light. Yahweh is my Elohim. What did he say? Yahweh separated water from water, like the second moed of unleavened bread, separating leavening from unleavening of the bread. And he said, don't let there be found in your house, in any of your possession, leaven. So the first day, just like the first Pesach, just like the first moed, which was Pesach, he said, you guys are slaves in Egypt. That's the darkness. That's the dungeon. And I am Yahweh, your Elohim, rescuing. He pulls them out. And he says, not that you guys are now anarchists with no law. He says, I am now your Elohim. You do what I say. That's what it means to be he being our Elohim and we his people. What did he say? And do it. And if you have a rotten attitude about it, yeah, I don't want to keep the law. I don't want to eat when he said to eat. I don't want to rest and work when he said to work. Well, then he ain't your Elohim. And you're outside again in the darkness. And you got nobody to blame but yourself. He said something, and you conduct your heart on the way it should be going, and you do what he said, because we're facing a civil war in this country as of this weekend. If you look at Seattle, and this isn't any fun and games sitting in church singing la-la songs anymore. The point is, you get up and do what he said. That's the menorah. And you be careful to bear the right fruit, the letter I and the table of showbread, and the Pei, the altar of incense. Lines up with the beatitude that says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Elohim. And the victory that he provides, that he promises to provide his people, and only his people, you got the wrong Elohim, you got no promise of victory. You're singing two songs to the wrong God, you got no promise of success. He says, if you don't listen to my words, I cannot hear your prayers. Pray all you want. Do the rosary all you want. Drink all the holy water you want. He cannot hear your prayers, according to his word. You do what he said, and the victory is promised. His word's not mine. And that letter Zadi is as significant as the Ark of the Covenant that it's represented by, and the resurrection of Yeshua, HaMashiach of Israel. And if your rabbi tells you he's an infidel, your rabbi is the infidel. Yeshua is the Mashiach of Israel, whose story is told in the 22 letters of the Ivrit Aleph Bet. For us to learn that and count on that is the strengthening. And to realize that as Yeshua rose up out of the grave, ascended in the heavens, he said he's coming back. When he comes back, he's the Resh. The Resh Sheen, the monogram of El Shaddai, the Almighty, the purveyor, the giver of all the benefits, the destroyer of all opposition. No one can stand before him. Every one of our knees will bow. And Yeshua, the preeminent one, as his ambassador, the Gimel Bet of Aleph, claiming to be the Dalet, Haid as the Vav who was Zion, so that man can turn back and enter through him being the Dalet to Gimel back to the Bet, the house of our Abba Father. The message of validating him in the Aleph Bet, to study the language, is to study the future, is to study eschatology. This is what's in front of us. And if I'm wrong, well, there's an interesting story in the book of Judges. Some Edomites, I think they were claiming that certain land of Israel was theirs, and they wanted it back. And there was no king in those days of Israel. And the Israelites were saying, oh gosh, what do we do? These guys just kept beating us up. And so they said to this one guy, hey, will you be our king? Will you be our leader? And he says, okay, if I'm going to be your, they hated the guy, but he says, if I'm going to be your king, then you got to do what I say. But this is what he said to the enemy. He said, listen, our Elohim, YHUH, gave our ancestors this land. So it's ours. So we're taking it. 300 years ago, our forefathers came in and our Elohim gave us this land. Now you guys are claiming that your God has given you this land. Well, if that's so, you can have whatever your God gives you. But our Elohim gave us this, so you have your portion and we'll have our portion. And if the two is in a conflict, let Yahweh, our Elohim, determine who's right and who's victorious and who will prevail. So the matter here is to say, if YHUH is the only Elohim, then his words are the only words, and his Zadi is the only sprout of resurrection. And his Mashiach is the only Mashiach, and it has to fit these 22 letters. So the reason for studying the 22 letters is to know the identity, the intent, the words, the instructions of our Elohim. And any other story that contradicts the Moed, Passover, unleavened bread, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, Day of Trumpets, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, Sukkot, the Day of Tabernacling Together, and Shemini Atzeret. If it doesn't line up according to that pattern, if it doesn't line up with the Torah and the testimony, there's no light. And you got the wrong God. You got the wrong Messiah. You've got the wrong hope. You've got the wrong promise, and it ain't a promise at all. So, here we stand. Yahweh is our Elohim. Read his words, understand what he said, and do it with an eye for your neighbor and a mouth of continual engagement with him. The altar of incense was a symbolic of the prayers of the saints, not the saints, it's the Kodashim. The Kodashim Elyonin, as it says in Daniel 7, which is those who are betrothed and set apart unto YHUH as his sacred, sanctified. Yahweh says, you alone have I declared myself, Israel, and those who are his people are the apple of his eye, are the twinkle of his eye, or what's called in Hebrew the little man of the eye. And he says, whoever touches you is jamming his own finger into his own eye. We are so much the pupil of Yahweh's eye, we must know that, count on that, stand in that, and find our shalom, our comfort, and our destiny in that. Therefore, when he says 1,000 will fall on this side and 10,000 to that, but it won't come nigh you, I have to choose to believe that reality and stand on that, no matter what these guys are doing in these different cities or even these different countries, and certainly other countries have encountered what America is just beginning to taste. Not diminishing anything, but Hodu la ki tov, ki leolam chazdo. Give thanks to Yahweh, for he is good, and his mercy is forever, which means that same heart of his mercy is accessible to us today. And that word chesed is also the word not just mercy, but secret refuge, like standing under the umbrella. Anything else you want to throw in? Schlenkmeister?
Thank you very much. Who could add to that?
All right, Shabbat Shalom.